What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Miltrick Media. I'm your host, Miltrick, and I'm here with Jeff Enrage at World Enrage, the lead singer and frontman of New York City hardcore band Enrage, also a promoter and bartender, promotes various shows around Staten Island. Jeff, how's it going? Thank you for being here.
Doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's go all the way back. Let's start with the beginnings of Enrage. So Enrage first started in the early 90s, right? Formed by childhood friends. So how long did you and the members of the band know each other? Where did that friendship begin?
Well, one of the guys I knew since birth was my brother.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
So, and he really wanted nothing to do with it. He didn't like hardcore. He didn't like punk. But, being brothers, I was like, come on, just we'll have fun. We'll play and rock music, that kind of thing. So, and the other guys, we grew up, we were kids and we just hung out together. And the thing about punk rock is that, and hardcore, at the time, especially when you're young, you don't have to know how to play that well. Yeah. So, it's all about aggression and feeling and the moment. So we just made ourselves a little, punk hardcore band. So we were like literally like kids, like teenagers, So it's crazy to think that here I am now and we're still doing this. So it's pretty wild. Yeah.
No, it's awesome. Before though, can we just move the mic over, drop?
Oh yeah.
Just a little bit more.
Better?
That's perfect. Yeah, as long as you're in front of it, yeah, because you got that boomy voice, which is perfect. So start with your brother. So so that's awesome. So, and when you first started, it started in Staten Island, right? So you practiced, rehearsed in Staten Island. Where was your first ever show? Because the story is you were inspired by the hardcore matinees at CBGB's,
right?
The Moors as well.
Yeah.
Where did you first play the very first Enrage show?
The very first Enrage show, we weren't even called Enrage yet.
Oh, okay.
We were called Unbridled Energy. And ready for this? It was the JCC. It was a JCC, like one of their rock. They started doing like rock events at the JCC.
Oh, wow.
That was the very first show. As Enrage, honestly, I forgot. It might have been right off the block here at Wave Park Villa. It was called. So that might have been the first show as Enrage. I don't remember. Yeah, it was so many years. We were kids, but I think our first show as Enrage was at the Park Villa on Staten Island, right off Bay Street, and if not there, then maybe at Nery's in Port Richmond.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you remember how you felt when you walked off the stage after that first show? How were you feeling? What was going through your head? Were you just amped up? Was it just filled with adrenaline?
I was, all adrenaline, amped up. It was, it was just fun, just seeing a bunch of kids jumping around, having fun, singing along. Especially when you start realizing people are singing along to songs that you wrote. You know what I mean? So I'm sitting there scribbling things in class when I was a kid in high school, and I'm writing stuff. And next thing you know, I'm singing these songs and people are singing back to me. It's even to this day, that's surreal for me.
That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Before you were a front man and a singer, did you also play any other instruments beforehand? Like, let's say drums, guitar, bass?
No. The reason why I couldn't play anything, that's how I wound up being a singer. I couldn't play. I didn't know how to play anything.
That's cool.
And like I said, my brother really was in the band because he was the only drummer that we knew.
Yeah.
And, he hated, like I said, he hated that music. But he wound up really, in the beginning, my brother Marco really took the reins, funny enough, for booking us, for booking the band. I think because, I think it almost helped that he wasn't involved in that culture, that he, for lack of a better word, didn't get starstruck if he had to call the people from Lemoore, or, if we were opening for a bigger band or he wanted to book a bigger band, he was like, oh, this is so-and-so. He didn't care because he wasn't involved in it. So he really, in the beginning, my brother Marco actually did a lot with the band as far as, I don't want to say managing, but I guess managing in the beginning,
That's cool. So he was reaching out to some people like venue owners trying to help with you guys solidify shows.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. And that's basically how that led to us booking our own shows.
Yeah.
Because what happened was we were bringing a lot of people, but we were kids. We weren't 21 yet.
Yeah.
So we were bringing at the time Staten Island, not just Enrage, but Staten Island in general had this huge music scene of like metal and hardcore. We're talking like 1,000 kids would come to a show.
Yeah.
And but we were kids, so we weren't making any money. And the bars, I guess, in their defense, the clubs, and especially in this area, that it was thriving, right? Where you had a Red Spot, you had so many places.
Yeah, I heard there was even more than now, so many venues and bars on Bay Street.
Incredible. It was incredible.
Right?
You would bar hop.
Oh, wow.
So right down the block, you would hop bar to bar, and there were tons of different venues. And it was one of the rare times where people from Manhattan and Brooklyn were coming to Staten Island to hang out.
Wow, that's amazing.
This is in the early 90s,
Because now you don't even necessarily hear that people from Brooklyn or Manhattan are coming to that part of the island. Just the bar hop, yeah.
It's crazy. It was,
that sounds fun, though.
Yeah, people were coming, taking the ferry and, or traveling, and they were coming to Staten Island. It was really wild.
Yeah.
And the whole, all of Bay Street over here was just hopping. So, wow. Yeah, it's surreal. You think about it now, right?
To think about, because it wasn't exactly this. Yeah, it wasn't the same.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Not at all.
In fact, I'm trying to think now. It shows my age. The very first Real World, the very first one, it was filmed at the Red Spot. Some of the scenes, guys' band played.
And Red Spot was a bar and venue on Bay Street back then.
Yeah, it was a bar. It was huge. It had 3 different rooms. So you would have rock bands in one room, and then it was a synth DJ playing new wave and goth in another room. A huge backyard, and then down the block you had the Wave, right over here, which was ginormous.
I've heard of the Wave. Yeah, my aunt told me about it.
The
from
Wave
the late '90s and everything.
Yeah, the Wave was huge, and then right over here, literally over here, you had the Park Villa.
Yeah.
So they were all near each other, and they were all thriving. They were all doing well, and then you had the bars, just people hopping around bars.
Yeah.
So we were playing these shows, bringing all these people, but we weren't making any money. At the time when you're a kid, you don't care if you're making money, But then after a while, you're like, well, if 1,000 people came in, and we're walking out with $100, that's what I'm bad at math, but it's 10 cents on the person coming in.
No, yeah, because then you think all right.
If we got $1, just give us $1 for each person coming in.
Yeah.
Then we made $1,000. You know what I mean? But so then we start. Well, again, my brother started negotiating with the venues and the bars about booking all ages shows, and that's how we really started taking off, because we learned how to book shows on our own and work out deals with the venues that we can make something. Not just us, all the bands.
It sounds like what you guys are doing, you open that conversation up.
Right.
In a big way, which is amazing. Yeah, because some venues, it's different, of course, it varies, but some do, some don't. They don't pull the trigger on all ages shows. They don't, because it's hard, because, the bar, of course,
and
it makes sense. Of course it makes sense, yeah.
Especially now as I'm older, I get it. If you're a bar, the last thing you want is a bunch of kids in your bar. So, but, they have different licenses, cabaret licenses, for shows, and you could do different ages for certain things. So we just basically learned how to navigate shows on our own. And again, my brother really took the reins on that. And that's kind of how I started booking, because for lack of a better word, he basically retired. Once he became a teacher, a coach, he became more of a family man, married, kids, the whole thing. He just I'm done.
Yeah.
And he did, he was in his early 20s by that time. And I was like, well, I'm going to keep, I'm not stopping. Yeah. So, and then I started doing the Jeff and Rage shows. But really I give credit to him in the beginning.
That's awesome. So so it sounds like what you guys were doing back then, it was just straight DIY booking.
Yeah.
Taking the reins of your own career.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you didn't have the internet back then, right?
No. We were literally
put flyers. You were just hustling, trying to get the word out.
Yeah.
And you were doing all ages shows on the island, opening that conversation up. That's amazing.
Yeah. We literally putting flyers on telephone poles, hiding from the police, because you were not supposed to do that. So what the state were doing, all that stuff, You
didn't want to get in trouble yet.
No.
That's amazing though.
Yeah.
So after those early days of Enrage, still in the early days.
Yeah.
So the first demo, Burning Within.
Yeah.
Came out around 92, 93, right? And it was produced by Josh Silver
of Typo Negative.
Negative. And it sold 3,000 copies independently, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about, before you went into the studio to record that, where was your head at? What did you want to accomplish with that project?
We were just fanboying out that we were doing it with Josh.
Yeah.
Because Typo was blowing up at the time. They weren't huge yet, but in the scene that we were involved in, the hardcore thrash metal scene, everybody knew about Carnivore, Peter Steele, Typo Negative. So they were already in our world a big thing. We had a demo before that, Hard Brutal Reality, but I think it was just literally a tape that we made, and somehow that got around. But like, we consider the first official demo, Burning Within.
Yeah.
Because that was like we made it look nice. We had a plastic wrap around it.
Nice.
But it was the whole thing was that we knew Josh had a good name and his background, obviously, and he put out good stuff. So we were like amped to go there. Yeah. And again, it was like, we were kids and we were trying not to freak out because we were huge Type O fans. And there's Josh, and we would ask about Peter Steele, and we're like, where's Pete? Like, he lives down over there. We're looking at Pete's car, like, maybe Pete will come in. He's like, he's not going to come in.
Where were you guys? Was it a studio in Staten Island, or was it in Brooklyn?
That was Brooklyn. That was in Brooklyn.
I was in Brooklyn.
And then later on, he did Life of Agony over there. And then actually the first Type O Negative, I think so. I think the first record was recorded there too. So his studio took off for a while, yeah. And then obviously after that, Type O became huge.
Yeah. That's amazing. Wow, that sounds, especially like just being young and doing that.
Yeah, we were kids.
It's like,
just going to Brooklyn, a bunch of Staten Island kids going to Brooklyn, for the guy in Type O's house, we were like, oh, this is great. We made it.
Yeah, exactly. Was that the first time you were ever in a professional recording studio? Or did you do stuff earlier than that?
I think that was, because we did, like I said, we did the hard brutal reality, and that was like in, rehearsal thing in Staten Island. That was like our first official, real recording studio. Yeah.
And back then you didn't have the internet, like you said, you didn't have iTunes, so you were just pushing out tapes and CDs independently, right?
100%.
Was it all just word of mouth and at shows?
Word of mouth. Literally, there was no internet, so you would literally just hand the tapes out, sell them if you could, but it was almost like street dealing. You give some out for free, and then
on the street team, basically,
yeah. And then
we were the goods,
We were all, and what we did too is that what we would do, I think what was different than other bands was that a lot of bands would concentrate, especially from Staten Island, like, we got to go play Manhattan. Like, Manhattan's where it's at. And we started hearing these stories like, well, you can play Manhattan, but you're going to play on a Tuesday night at 2:00 in the morning, which we did, that kind of stuff, like a Chinese restaurant, no one's going to be there. And you're spending money to get to Manhattan. So we would like calculate in our heads, okay, let's just say it costs $50 to fill up a gas, gas tank. Why, this to travel the bridge. Why don't we just take that money? We'll make more demos and hand them out if we're eating that money. So we would literally spend our money handing out demos, not even caring if we made money off them. Mm-hmm. And that's how we got our name out. Yeah. So we just spent money, whatever we had, like our allowance, you know what I mean? And anything that we saved by not booking shows, like you have friends who smoke cigarettes and they stop and they go, I saved this much money because I'm not smoking cigarettes anymore.
Yeah.
So we would do like that. Like we would say like, we're saving this much money by not playing Manhattan. And we would make tapes and hand them out. And that's how the name got around. And we would go to like the big shows in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Like whoever was playing like Prong or Cro-Mags or White Zombie. And then we would just hand out, I'd stand there and be like, take them. Yeah. And people just, jumped on the tapes, and then word of mouth got around. No internet.
That's amazing. Yeah. So back then, since things were different, what was your favorite part about promoting back then in the 90s?
Really, at that time, we were just promoting ourselves and our bands who were playing with us. And then we started to notice, we got we started to get I don't know, maybe a chip on our shoulder, because we started to notice that, again, we couldn't get gigs in Manhattan unless they were like, can I curse on the other shitty?
Yeah.
They were shitty gigs.
Yeah.
Then Brooklyn had this huge hardcore scene, and they were kind of like, yeah, you're from Staten Island. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So we kind of got this chip on our shoulder for a while where we tried to like, all right, well, we're just going to do it ourselves even more so. It was kind of, it just gave us more of a gumption and a fight to do it on our own. So that's
DIY from the get-go, yeah.
Yeah, really from the get-go. And then, but we didn't expect, I guess a pushback from some people in the hardcore scene being that we were from Staten Island. And then what happened was then Wu-Tang came out with 36 Chambers.
Yeah.
And they were the first group, I mean, they were hip-hop, but they were the first group that I remember where they were like, we're from Staten Island.
Yeah.
Like we're going to say we're from Staten Island. We're representing Staten Island. We're going to rep our city. And that opened up our eyes. We were like, because we would have like at the time like when labels were like sniffing around and talking to us, they would say, I'm not lying. They would say like, don't say you're from Staten Island. Say you're from Brooklyn.
Wait, so even then, like you were saying, why did that matter? Like, how does that affect the art
Staten
of the
Island,
music?
Staten
It's
Island
just a place. It's still the city.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
what does it matter?
Because if you talk to people, you see even memes now, like people just clown on Staten Island. So they would literally say to us, just say you're from Brooklyn, or take a picture in front of CBGB and we're going to just say you hang out there. I don't think we don't live, you know. Like I used to go to CBGB. I'd sneak and go. But it was just so phony to me. And we were just trying to break through this kind of like glass ceiling about that. And then, like I said, when Wu-Tang came out and they were like, fuck it, we're from Staten Island, that was like an epiphany for us. And then we became like...
They proudly repped it, didn't care.
Right. And it worked. Yeah. I mean, it worked for them.
Yeah.
And so that's when we were kind of like, all right, we're saying we're from Staten Island. We're not going to lie and say we're from Brooklyn. We weren't from Brooklyn, you know? And I thought it was disingenuous to people, you know, bands from Brooklyn, or if you're from Brooklyn, to say, I am from Brooklyn. Well, I'm not from Brooklyn. Yeah. So I thought, it wouldn't be cool to them either. And that's kind of where this whole thing came, where we just pushing that we're from Staten Island. That was in the very beginning, yeah. Maybe to a flaw, because like I said, because to this day, people still kind of joke about Staten Island, you know? Yeah. So who knows? You know, maybe it bit us in the butt doing that, but that's where our head was at, you know? Yeah,
that's where your head was at, yeah. And you were just representing.
Yeah, we just repped and repped, yeah.
Yeah. So then after burning within that demo, working with Josh from Typo Negative, then you moved on and Enrage was working on the Empty CD.
Yeah, yeah.
Was that your official debut CD?
Yeah, kind of.
You work with Noah Evans, who also worked with Beastie Boys, Bad Brains. What was that like working with Noah?
Noah's the coolest. First of all, Noah's the coolest. What was great about Noah was, again, he's from that culture. He knows that scene. It was, his studio was fantastic too, because that was like the first time where I was able to do my vocals and hold it like a mic, which I could never do.
Oh, you were like gripping it instead of like being in the booth kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can't move, and it feels like you're because you're trying to get the best signal.
And he let me do it.
That's messed with me, yeah.
Yeah, he let me do it almost like we're playing a live show. And we had so much respect for Noah. I mean, we still do. Just his background. I mean, where his family comes from. His family has a long history of music. So that was huge for us. Those demos, there was supposed to be demos. At the time, we wouldn't get signed to Roadrunner, Road Race, or whatever there was at the time.
Yeah, Roadrunner Records. That's huge. They were the band that signed Cold Chamber, Slipknot.
Slipknot, huge, Typo Negative, Life of Agony. So we were talking to them, and so we would give them a song, and they were like, give us another, give us another, give us another. And what's funny is at the time, this is when Typo started becoming more melodic.
Yeah.
Life of Agony, they became way more melodic. So that's what they wanted us to do. And I just wasn't as good. I couldn't sing as well as Mina, Keith at the time, and I couldn't sing as well as Pete when he was singing. So I was like, oh, I'm all right. But we were trying to get more melodic. And we were into that more anyway, like kind of like the gloom and doom vocals instead of the barking all the time. And so those were really, Empty was supposed to be demos for Roadrunner.
I got you.
And then it just turned into our record, and we put it out ourselves, you know.
Also, at that point, you just put it out independently.
Right. Yeah. We got a distribution deal in Europe, and then after that, and then Phantom Power was a label on Staten Island. They picked it up for a hot minute, and then after that, we just put it out again. We put it out independently, really.
Yeah. So at that point, after that record came out, what were the shows like? Where were you guys playing? Were you guys just hitting hard in the Northeast, in New York City? You guys were playing at CBGB sometimes, stuff like that?
We did CBGBs. We did two things that we tried to set out from a little different from some of the hardcore bands. Was we were playing a lot of the metal shows actually at Lemoore. So Lemoore in Brooklyn was like, right? That was the rock capital of the world. That was like, it was, surreal because it's 15 minutes from my house. But they had everybody. I mean, like Metallica played. I mean, everybody played there.
Oh, wow.
So we were like, once we started getting at Lemoore, we started playing the metal shows and obviously the hardcore punk shows. We did that, and that was really doing well for us. And then what we did, we took an opposite route. Instead of playing Manhattan that much, we would go play like in like Bumblefuck, Pennsylvania or somewhere, or Connecticut, out in the middle of nowhere, in like a VFW, because those places, those kids were like hungry for shows.
Yeah, right.
Hungry. So we drive out in the middle of nowhere, like look at something, have a horror movie, like what are we doing here? And you pull up and there's like 300-400 kids for a show.
They were probably starved because they're not necessarily as around the big cities. There was no social media. So whenever a show pulled up, they're like, let's fucking go crazy.
Exactly. And I think that's why Staten Island at the time was doing so well too. Because again, even though we're part of, the 5 boroughs, we're kind of ostracized. So when we started building up a scene over here, it blew up over here. Not just Enrage, like all the bands. Like I said, 1,000 kids a show is unheard of. And then what happened was the bigger bands from Manhattan and Brooklyn started hearing about like 1,000 kids at a show. Like, yeah, and they started coming and we started getting big bands on Staten Island, which was...
They're like, yeah, I'm down to pay that toll now. Let's go hang out.
Yeah, so
go
that was...
Arizona. Let's see what's going on.
Exactly. That was unheard of to have...
That's amazing. That's massive. For,
so we had over here Gwar, again, Typo Negative, the Cro-Mags, Bolt Thrower, and all these heavy extreme bands, sick of it all, started all coming to Staten Island because there was something going on here. There was something going on. So, and we, like I said, even local shows, with no national acts, 400 or 500 kids a show at least.
That's amazing.
So it was almost, so we took that philosophy and said, well, if Staten Island's kind of like this like area that no one wants to, where kids were hungry for shows, we thought the same thing must be happening in Connecticut and, like I said, Pennsylvania or Delaware, where we're figuring they don't get shows a lot.
Yeah.
So when we heard about shows over there, we would jump on those, and that's what we really focused on. And at the time, that did well for us.
The bands you just mentioned, when they came through to Staten Island, what venues were they playing at? They were playing on Bay Street?
There was, so it was the Wave, Park Villa, the Rock Palace was a big one. So that was like our place for a hot minute. Again, my brother booked a lot of the bands over there. There was a Rock Palace. Let's see. Yeah, I said the Wave, Park Villa. And then after those places kind of closed down or whatever, I know I'm forgetting stuff too. Nery's. Then I started doing Dock Street. And I did Dock Street for about 10 years.
Yeah. So even like you mentioned, I don't even know about these venues. They sound amazing. Like
amazing.
Was it Rock Palace and Park Villa? So they were open until when? The late 90s? Like when did they stop being open?
Maybe late 90s they stopped. Late? Yeah, I'm guessing late 90s they stopped.
Late 90s. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the capacity of these venues back then?
You could fit a couple thousand people in some of them.
Oh, wow.
Like the Wave was huge. Park Villa was huge. Red Spot was huge. I think maybe that's why they couldn't sustain anymore, because it was so big. These were big rooms.
Yeah. And it was right here, because we're on Wave Street now, so it was like...
Literally right here. So
wow.
The Wave was ginormous. They had like an upstairs lounge, and the Red Spot, like I said, had 3 different rooms, a backyard, a DJ room. Rock Palace could hold about 500-600 people alone. And then they had a separate room.
It's bigger than venues in Manhattan and Brooklyn, some of them. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
That sounds amazing.
Totally bigger. Yeah. We literally got the Bad Brains to play on Staten Island. That was like our coup de grace.
That's fucking wild. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you also play with other bands like Hatebreed and Biohazard you mentioned. So
Biohazard a bunch of times, yeah.
So in the mid-90s at this point, were you also going on regional tours with some of these acts? Were you opening for them? Like, what was the...
We were opening for a lot of the bigger hardcore bands. We would do, like I was mentioning, so like we would play in these like I hate the term, like lesser market, but like we were playing in areas where they didn't get a lot of shows.
Yeah.
And that's where we would open for like Biohazard, Hatebreed, because they knew also you go to these areas, kids are hungry.
Yeah.
And we would open those shows. But we were playing places like Boston too, like, popular areas. And so that's what we focused on. So we did a lot of the hardcore shows in those like more remote areas. And then we played Brooklyn, which was to us the city. That was playing Lamar, and that's where we opened for the big metal bands like Morbid Angel and all these other huge metal bands. That was really cool for us to do that. And then, when you play with bands, you network and you make friends. And then we became pretty tight with a lot of the bands from New England area.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, particularly it was Only Living Witness and Sam Black Church, those two bands. And we kind of, I think we really meshed, not so much musically because they were a lot better than us, but where our heads were at, because like we were all kind of in the same mindset where we were a lot of long-haired guys, but we were playing punk rock, so we didn't fit in. We were a little too metal for the hardcore scene and a little too punk rock for the metal scene. And I think that kind of, and we didn't have the look, you know, again, there was a weird time in the 90s where like if you actually had long hair, it wasn't cool.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. Like,
wow.
Because I remember a guy in Pantera shaved his head at the time. And it was like, you know.
Phil had the crew cut for a while.
Yeah. So it was a thing where like long hair wasn't cool anymore, especially if you're playing punk, hardcore.
So at that point, hardcore and punk, it wasn't necessarily that. It wasn't long hair, so it was different back then. So it was more like crew cut, stuff like that. Oh, wow.
You had to have a certain image. And I mean, there's like infamous stories where like if you were a long hair, like I used to be a long haired dude and I would hang out in CBGBs. I was like sneaking in, I was like 15. And if you had long hair, if you walked into CBGBs at a hardcore matinee, like it was almost like you had to have like a clout or get like a guest pass, a social guest pass, because you can get your ass kicked. If you walked in there wearing, had long hair, wearing like a Metallica shirt, and you're going to a hardcore show and you're trying to make your way to the front, they
wouldn't take it.
There's a story about Kirk Hammett of like literally of Metallica. There's audio of it somewhere, not video, of him like getting clocked.
Oh wow!
They didn't know it was.
Or
maybe because he was a dude in Metallica. So you had to have like, oh no, he's Jeff's cool, he's okay, like he's one of us, it's all right. So when you're playing in like a hardcore band and we've done shows, I'm not kidding you, we did shows where like we would play these hardcore bands, like let's say like Hatebreed, and Hatebreed sound pretty metal. I mean, I'm saying in a good way,
Yeah.
And so they used to have that metal sound, and so we play with these bands that all were kind of like Hatebreed-esque and even more metal sounding, but they look like hardcore bands. And then we would come out there, and I used to wear my hair like in a Rasta hat and a ponytail, and then I would take my hat off, my long hair would come out, and literally kids would like walk away from the stage sometimes.
Oh, wow.
They're like, they're a metal band, So it was crazy for a while. You had to work double hard. It was pretty wild scene for a while.
So sneaking into CBGBs at 15, how'd you manage that?
I don't know.
What was that like?
It wasn't like they had, strict ID policy.
Yeah.
It was crazy when I think about it now, because the Lower East Side still wasn't safe to go there in the 80s. I mean, it wasn't like it was in the 70s, but it still wasn't safe to go. And like, I would just lie to my mom, like, oh, I'm going with my buddy Mark. We're going to go to movies and then we're going to go to diner. And meanwhile, we were like on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, like at CBGB's, like down the block, there's junkies and crime. And
were you going there alone back then, or you would actually go with a group of friends?
Me and a group of friends. Yeah, me and a group of friends. Yeah.
But when you were 15, did you look like you were 21?
No.
Oh, no.
I look like a 15-year-old. I mean, I was giant. I look like a giant. I look weird.
No, I got you.
I was a giant 15. I was like this size at like 15, but my face had a baby face and my long hair.
That sounds like a Russia. That sounds fun. that sounds fun.
That's what we would sneak into. It's funny because we weren't like, my friends and I, like, we weren't getting like, fucked up and doing drugs and stuff like that, but we would go to these like unsavory areas like CBGB, and even Lemoore was a little sketchy here and there, and just, but when you're young, it's fun.
And you wanted to see the music, you want to see the great shows.
Yeah,
and chasing that.
And especially when you're young, the danger too.
100%, yeah.
That something bad could happen.
Yeah,
That's kind of the thrill of it. So we're like, we would see like people get beat down and stuff like that. We're like, this is great.
Yeah, like even when I used to go, for us. It was like I went to when I started going to my first shows with friends, like in Manhattan. I played a show at Santos Party House. I was 17. It was a rush, and I went to see. I remember like seeing a show at Roseland Ballroom. I saw like Korn at Roseland Ballroom with one of the friend, and I was 15 going on 16, and just like being in the city alone. It's like, this is amazing.
Exactly.
It felt like you're in a movie. It's like, holy shit, I'm in the city. I'm 15. You're hanging out with whoever. Yeah. And it's like, how is this real life right now,
Exactly the same thing. Exactly.
I wish I was around to see CBGBs hang out there. And even like when the Strokes and like that whole scene, like the indie rock scene took over like 20 years ago, when like that whole, like, there was so many great bars and everything in the Lower East Side, out in the city. Still are, but just like you had that movement going on.
Oh yeah.
That sounds really fun though. So after that, let's talk about the first time you ever went on tour. What was that like? even because the band has played all up and down the East Coast, from here to Florida. You also, Enrage, played some shows in Belgium and France, right?
Crazy enough,
Over
that
the
was
years?
somewhat recently.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy. It took us. So again, we were joking how like we used to always joke like, you know, we can't get a gig. It was getting hard to get like gigs out of Staten Island unless there was somewhere, you know, remote. And my friends would go play in Europe, and they were like, "You guys are popular over there." I'm like, "Well, I don't know. How do I know?" And I would see about people buying. They're wearing Enrage shirts. I'm like, "This is weird." But at the time, then we kind of like, you know, it's not that we broke up. It's just it kind of just fizzled out. Like I said, my brother became more of a family man, and other guys, you know, same thing. You know, it's not that you go, "I quit." It's just like, well, I got my kids' communion.
Yeah, sometimes life just takes over.
Life takes over, right?
Yeah, that's normal.
So we were kind of just like fading, and then kind of what me and you were talking about before, like, you know, Facebook and social media started popping off, and we just got hit up to out of nowhere go play over in Europe. You know, we were like, what?
That's a dream come true for me. I mean,
it was like, what? And so
I just want to go to Europe.
Next thing I know, so it was me and my guitar player, Mike, you know, the two original guys.
Yeah.
And we just went up, you know, with some of the newer guys going to Europe. Now this is, you know, 20 years later. So think of it. We're like, you know, kids. And next thing you know, more than 20 years later, we're getting asked to go play Europe finally. And so, yeah, we flew out to Europe and we did some shows, and then we went back again and we did a festival. And that was the most surreal. There's a great picture one of our friends took where I walk out on stage and you just see my face like, what the? Because like, you know, it's just, it's like you see on TV or, you know, on YouTube, it's like we're playing and the whole room just filled up.
Yeah.
None of these people speak, I mean, they speak English pretty well, but you know, the 90% of the crowd doesn't speak English. And they're singing along to our songs. And I'm
That's
like,
amazing.
that was the weirdest, coolest thing ever. So if we never get to do a festival again, like, it's a high. I'll never be, like, you know, I can at least say we did it. I mean, obviously I would love to do it again. I mean, now with everything, you know, opening up again, maybe, hopefully, but that was the pinnacle for us. Our friend, and then what's even better is that we made really good friends over there. That we didn't expect. You know, everybody over there, they're lovely. I mean, they're beautiful. Heart, you know, their hearts are generous.
Yeah.
And that we never expected, to make such good friends over there. You know, I'll give a shout out to a few of them. I know I'm gonna forget some, but our friend Ugo, he's the main guy. He got us out there. He was a really instrumental. Our friend Ugo. Again, I call him my friend now, but at the time I didn't even know him. So, you know, now I consider him a friend.
Yeah.
There's so many good people over there. We made so many friends over there. So I want to go back. Even if we can't play, I just want to go back just because.
Is it the first time you ever visited Europe?
I went to Italy before with my dad.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I want to go to Italy. So
Italy's beautiful. Yeah, Italy's beautiful. So even if I can't play again with the band, I just want to go, and because I miss these people. They're just great people. Yeah, and they've come to the States. They've come to the States. Some of them a few times over the past few years. Like this is like so we did a show with the Misfits, which again that was surreal. So we did a show with the Misfits in Starland, Jersey, and a couple of friends in Europe found out about it. Like, we're coming in to see you. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they flew in.
It's coming to Starland.
To see. They flew in from Belgium to New Jersey to see us. So like that's love, man.
That is love. Yeah. And the festival, was this festival in Belgium?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Hyperfest or Yper. I don't know which way I'm pronouncing it correctly or not, but it's like a big hardcore punk fest over there.
Yeah.
But metal bands play too. And so that was a fest we did over there. I would love to do something like that again. Even though I say, like, if I just do it once, I'm done. That's all I need to do. But once you get that in your blood,
why not do it again? Yeah, that'd be a dream, right?
Yeah, totally.
So moving on throughout Enrage's career, recently over the last couple of years, you've released a trilogy of EPs, the Gateways EPs. Let's talk about those records.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the songs. So you're the main songwriter, lyricist at least, right?
Yeah,
Frontman.
definitely, yeah.
So what inspired the lyrics? Where was your head at when you were creating and writing for the Gateways EP?
Basically, lyrics have become harder for me because when I was younger, I was, as cliche as it sounds, like I was in a darker area in my life. You know, I was more of a morbid, sullen, dude. So it's actually easier for your art to write.
Yeah.
If you're depressed and you're angry and you're sad, you're writing some good stuff. Thank God, life is pretty good for me, right now. And so it's kind of hard. Again, you don't want to be disingenuous, and so it's kind of hard to write because I was but then you kind of just tap that anger, things that make you anger or things that make you upset. And I would just tap into that.
Yeah.
And I would just start riffing off that. Or something, I would get a line in my head and then just kind of almost like a seed and just build from there. And that's how we came up. And with the EPs, some songs are more dark and some songs are happier, but the main focus of doing it as EPs was like, I just feel like no one has attention spans anymore.
Yeah.
Including myself.
No, yeah.
And
same with me. I realize I'm more of like a single song guy too. It's just changed. Some albums I love from childhood, it's like I'll go back to them. I still do, it depends. But yeah, same thing. It's like you're flipping back and forth between so many things.
Right. And I read a great interview with Rob Zombie. And he said, I think the new format of music is going to be, and this is again before my time, where they used to release singles before an album. Like, everyone put out 45s, 45. I'm not saying necessarily 45s, but people put out singles. And then after the singles, a few singles came out, then they would release the album.
And it had all the biggest singles on it.
Right.
It was like, back probably like the post-war era, like once the 50 early rock and roll, it was all 45.
Right. Early rock and roll. Even the Beatles were doing that, I believe. So
just singles, I think
right.
That's how they broke in America.
Exactly. So you did single. And then you put all the singles together and now you have a record. He goes, I think it's going to go back to that. And then something just clicked in my head. I'm like, all right, let's just do 2-3 songs that pop. And then we'll put it, and see where it goes. So that's what we're doing now, basically.
Yeah.
And then during the pandemic, we wound up running in. We had an idea right before the pandemic. And we wound up finishing it up, like literally, like as things were shutting down. So that was the last thing we did. Now we're recording now again too.
So that last record that you had in the works, you finished it off like early 2020, right before
literally
stuff started.
Like January, February 20. I did the vocals for that mid-March. Like I was going to my guitar player's house, going, I don't know, is it okay to leave the house? Like I didn't know,
Yeah.
You didn't know what you were supposed to do. I'm like, is it cool for me to be here? Are we allowed to leave? Like especially in New York City. So I recorded the vocals. You got crazy. And we got it out, at least the recording, right before everything really shut down. And then he wound up mixing everything, I guess, from his house. And then we released it on, YouTube and everything else.
Yeah, all the services.
That was the EP was called I Want to EP Somebody.
Because I saw that.
The Wasp
that was
cover, I Want to Be
title.
Somebody. Yeah.
Great title.
So that was it. We just did those 2 songs during the original and the Wasp cover during the pandemic. And that's what we had. That came out a couple years ago. And now we're writing again.
Yeah. So we talked about those festivals and the festival you played and the European shows. But besides that, throughout your career with Enrage, what is the most memorable show you've ever played?
Probably with the Bad Brains.
The Bad Brains.
Because they're like the holy grail to me. I would say probably the Bad Brains was probably the most memorable show we did off the top of my head. I know I'm missing a couple of others. The Stomp Out Cancer one we did actually somewhat recently. That was really memorable. We had all the old members come up and we did a benefit. And I would say maybe even locally, like the first reunion show, like we put out the Nothing Stays Buried CD, like the comeback, for lack of a word, CD. And we did the hashtag.
Yeah.
And then the hashtag sold out in a couple of minutes and we couldn't believe it. Because you gotta remember, we haven't played out in Staten Island in over a decade.
Yeah.
And here we are, we're older, we got our dad bods now and walking out on stage and the place is filled up.
That record came out in 2010, right?
Yeah, in 2010.
Oh, wow, nice.
So we were ready before that, it was like 10 years of, nothing. So that was already, we're like, oh my God, people remember us, So that was really.
That sounds like an amazing feeling.
Yeah, that honestly was. So maybe but literally off the top of my head, the Bad Brains immediately is the one I could think of because just, I worship that band. So.
And what year was that show?
That was in the 90s. And my professor from college came down to see us play that show because he was like a big punk rock guy. And at the Rock Palace in the 90s, that's when they had the Rise record. HR was in the band, Israel was, and he was fantastic. He doesn't get enough credit. And like they were like sitting us down and giving us advice. It was like I was sitting with a shaman. Like I was like, Dr. No is like giving me advice. Like I was sitting there like totally fanboying out, like, okay, or whatever you say. Yes. Whatever they wanted, whatever they said, I was just soaking in whatever knowledge he was giving me.
Yeah.
You know.
That sounds amazing. So that show, the Bad Brains show, they played at Staten Island. So you opened at the Rock Palace.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It sounded like there was amazing venues here. Still are great venues on the
There's
island.
some
but
good
just
venues here. Yeah.
That would have been an amazing new experience. Yeah. So what are your biggest musical influences?
In the beginning, we were heavy into like, you know, the hardcore stuff, you know, like Sick of It All, the usual Sick of It All, Agnostic Front, Cro-Mags. Breakdown was big for me in 87. I was a kid, I heard Breakdown. And then we were really, really into, again, because we were like metal kids too. Like, so there was this, like a lot of times when you get into hardcore, you know, and if you come from a background of being a heavy metal kid, like, well, now I'm into hardcore. And you shave your head and, you know, the whole thing. But we were always, like I said before, like we kind of still listen to metal too. So we were really also into like the whole Bay Area thrash thing of like, you know, Testament, Exodus, all those bands from the West Coast and all the bands from Europe like Creator and Destruction. And so we just took that all and kind of put it in a blender. And that's how we got Enrage. And with the crossover stuff, we were really into, because that was coming out. There was like Carnivore and Leeway and Nuclear Assault and Cryptic Slaughter and all that stuff we were into. So we were into like all the heavy, aggressive stuff, you know.
Yeah. The music you make with Enrage and Enrage, what would you say the genre is?
It definitely was, we consider it more, I know metalcore now is a different, it means something completely different, but it's so, I guess it's crossover metal, crossover thrash, crossover hardcore. Believe me, I'm not saying we're like, you know, you can't define. I'm not saying you can't define us. What I'm saying is like, we're a little too metal for hardcore, pure hardcore, and we're a little too punk hardcore for metal. Mm-hmm. So we're in that lane.
Yeah.
You know, there's a revival now of like crossover thrash, but that kind of stuff is more like, it's very lighthearted, which is great. You know, there's like Municipal Waste and these bands like that. But then there's a whole nother era of bands coming up that kind of take that crossover sound, like Power Trip is a great example, where what they were doing was, you know, exactly the road that we were kind of on as well. And especially for young cats like that was great to hear. So we're kind of in that area, I would say, that kind of like crossover thrash. Whatever.
Thrash, yeah. That's cool. What does hardcore mean to you?
Let's see. I guess purity, you know. Really, I guess that's the first word that comes to mind. You know, keeping things simplistic and honest and bare bones, you know. Definitely DIY. But you could use all those elements in metal too. But that's really what hardcore, you know, means to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So besides your music career, you're also a promoter, you're a bartender, host numerous shows all around Staten Island.
Yeah.
At Mother Pugs, also at Juicy Lucy, you host so many shows. So what do you love about promoting shows and bartending?
I have no idea. No. This is true. Like, you know, that all that stuff from promoting bands really, like I said, came from Enrage doing shows, and we learned how to book our own shows. That's how it'll happen.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. How it all started.
So I've been booking, like I said, my brother was kind of the one who started it with Enrage. He was booking shows at the Rock Palace, getting like these big bands to play there. Then he kind of just, you know, faded out, you know, became more of a family-oriented guy. And I was like, well, I'm going to keep going. And I just kept doing it. Now, I've been doing it now longer than anybody on Staten Island. You know, that over 20 years I've been booking bands. And I barely book hardcore bands anymore. I barely book metal bands. Right now, currently, there's a huge like indie alternative scene on Staten Island of young people who are like super talented and just sweet. They're all just nice too. I'm not used to that. nice musicians, nice people. And I think the reason why I keep doing it is, you know, I was talking to Phil at Mother Pugs. He's like an old, you know, he's an OG. And he's been around before me. And he said to me, you know, you just like doing this. And he's right, because it's almost like, you know, if you think about it, when people make fun of people on social media, because like, you know, they show their food that they made or whatever. I think people, you know, humans, we like to share something that we've put together. You know, like I did this and I'm showing this to you. It's the same thing with bartending. Like if I make, as cheesy as it sounds, like if I make a good drink and someone likes it, I go, yeah, I made that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So when I put a show,
it is an art form in itself as well.
Yeah. So when I put a show together and I see that people are happy and I see they're having a good time and I see that the bands are happy and they're not getting screwed over. I think bands know when they play a Jeff Enrage show, there's a certain amount of ethics where they're going to get paid. They're going to be treated well. And that gives me pride. I mean, I don't make any money from the shows I book. Obviously, I'm not doing it for my health. I make the money from the tips from bartending. So the bands make all their money that way. And then obviously if people come and they're buying drinks, that's how I make my money. Mm-hmm. So I don't take a cut of their money. So I think that's why it works out so well. Yeah, and it makes me feel nice knowing. I remember when I was doing Doc Strip the Block, we were doing the all ages shows. And parents were coming to me and they were saying, you know, can I just, you know, peek my head in? And yeah, of course, you know, and they were like, I just love knowing that there's a place that my kid can go and they're safe and nothing's going to happen to them. I was a teacher at the time and I'm like, you know, yeah, we're not serving underage in here. You know, this is a safe place. Yeah. So people loved knowing that when we were doing all ages over there, that it was a place where kids could go and nothing bad was going to happen, you know?
Yeah, no, that's really cool. That's awesome. So besides the promoting and also bartending, mm-hmm. you bartended numerous places on Staten Island. So where are you at now? And what also shows you have coming up do you want to share with the audience?
So right now I'm booking a Juicy Lucy as well. I was doing the GOAT for a hot minute. The GOAT was a great spot. They just didn't survive, you know, the whole pandemic thing. I'm still doing Pugs. And I'm bartending at Mexican Cantina. No shows over there. I'm just plain old bartending. Antonio does karaoke. But I'm going to be bringing some stuff like now Juicy Lucy. I'm kind of expanding. Like I'm doing comedy and karaoke and I'm hosting that kind of stuff too.
Oh, that's cool. So you're going to start implementing those kind of parts of the show. Like comedy shows.
Comedy shows, right. I got Steve Duca doing that kind of stuff for me. So to me, it's more like branding my name. Again, that people know if they play for Jeff Enrage, they're going to be treated a certain way. And they know if they do one of my shows that I promote, like no one promotes as much as I do to a floor. Yeah. That I promote I promote like an animal.
You kill the promo game.
So I think bands know that now.
Yeah.
Like, well, if I play Jeff's show, he's going to promote it. So that's basically, I'm just on that road right now. And, you know, I never know how long it's going to last. I keep saying, how much longer can I do this? But knock on wood, you know, so far, so good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So what else do you want to share with the audience? What events do you have coming up that you want to let us know about?
So some of the, I got, okay, well, most importantly, Enrage is recording. So we're recording right now. We're going to do these singles again, but the difference this time is when we record all the songs at once, mix, master them, the whole thing, then release them piece by piece. That's the next thing we're doing. The band is right now is basically me, Mike Pellegrino, who's been the original, Ryan Donato on drums. He's been with us for about, I would say 5-6 years now. The kid's a monster. And then Mike's going to play bass on recordings. And when we play live, we'll see what we'll do about who's going to play bass live. Last couple of shows is Robbie Padavano, Rob Marinelli. So that's what's going on with Enrage. As far as promotional stuff, yeah, still doing the local bands. I try to keep the shows, again, that Staten Island ethic where I want Staten Island bands, push Staten Island bands, and then pepper it with a couple of bands from off Staten Island. Mm-hmm. So I'm still doing that. Now I'm doing the Juicy Lucy. And that's taking off over there because at first, it was slow. And again, I feel like it's doing well over there now because same thing. People know it's a cool spot. They know my name. They know they're going to get paid. They're going to be treated well. And obviously we're still doing Pugs. So I'm doing emo night karaoke coming up in there. That's fun.
That sounds cool. Yeah,
that's because it's a live band. So it's a live band and you come up and sing with them.
And what, that's going to be a Pugs?
That's going to be a Pugs, yeah.
When's that going to be?
April. End of April.
Okay, end of April.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, you heard it here first, yeah. And then they're coming back in wintertime at Lucy. So I'm just keeping busy. I work, I like doing what I do. I like promoting. I like bartending. It's fun. Now that everything's opening back up again, hopefully it just gets bigger and better again.
Oh yeah, for sure. And everything you're doing, it seems like you love it, which is amazing. Yeah.
For some strange reason, I do. I don't know why I love it, but I do. I do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So where can we find you on social media? Let the audience know. Where can we find you and Enrage? Let them know everything.
Okay. So World Enrage on Instagram. Enrage on Facebook. Jeff Enrage Altieri on Facebook. I know I got to do TikTok now, right? I'm stuck.
Why not?
I'm gonna have to do TikTok.
Short form content.
You may be my inspiration, and I might have to do TikTok. I thought I was too old to do it, but now I'm here and I got to do it. I got to do it.
No.
So I'm talking about maybe doing TikTok. So if I do that, but the Instagram. So basically, like the way the socials go is like, the Enrage Instagram is basically what we've been talking about. The band and the promotions I do for other people.
Yeah.
So then you have the Enrage, which is just strictly Enrage on Facebook, and then my personal Facebook page, which is a little bit of everything also. But more personal stuff like my niece and nephew and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. So what about also YouTube or Twitter?
Oh yeah. Oh, good, thank you. When I'm not far on Twitter, we should be. We're on Bandcamp. I have to revive the Bandcamp. I'm bad with that. That's a sin.
It's all good.
And we're on YouTube also. Yeah, World Enrage on YouTube, I believe, as well.
World Enrage on YouTube, also Twitter. All right, you let us know. Bandcamp, you got the music on Bandcamp. People could check it out. And also the official band website, worldenrage.com.
Right? Yeah. And then we're on all the streaming services, Amazon, Spotify, Apple, all of them. They're all on there.
Yeah, all of them and then some. Yeah.
We're hip with that. I do have to get my Bandcamp game up and my TikTok game up. But yeah, but we're on all the streaming services. It was wild because I was bartending last week and some dude, he's like, "You look really familiar to me." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know." And so I'm mentioning, well, maybe here or there. He goes, "You're the dude from Enrage. You're the dude from Enrage." I'm like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Are you guys, still jamming? You're still playing?" And I was like, "Yeah, go on your phone, right? We have new stuff. You have new stuff." It's always the guys our age who kind of don't know what.
And you're making that connection.
Yeah, the older guys my age don't know that we have new stuff. I always feel like they're kind of still living in 1995. So it's the younger heads who it's weird. Like the younger people know our new stuff, our old stuff, which is great. It's the guys my age who are like, "Yeah, you're still making music." I'm like, "Yeah, go on your Apple or go on your Amazon." Like, "You guys have new stuff." Right? He's texting his friend, "They have new stuff."
That's cool though.
Yeah.
And the birth of Jeff Enrage's TikTok, it was birthed here. This is where the origin and the inspiration came on Miltrick Media.
That's right.
He's going to blow up on TikTok 2023. You're going to see it. Legendary. But that's awesome.
Yeah.
Jeff, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Really had a great time. Jeff Enrage on another episode of Miltrick Media. Talked about the history of Enrage and then some. Thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you all for tuning in. And we will see you soon.